This episode of The Old Man of the Three is presented by BMW. Don't settle for good when you can have the ultimate. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Welcome to The Old Man of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 243, Zach Lowe, Finals Mailbag. I just want to thank everyone who sent in questions on Twitter and Instagram for the mailbag episode. There was some redundancy in some of the questions, and a lot of the questions asked about the same topics. So if you did send in a question, I didn't get to it. I apologize. But I do appreciate, because some of these questions were so thoughtful, so pertinent to this playoff series, to the NBA Finals, this matchup between the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. Real quick, our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. Dallas is the underdog in this series. Right now, Dallas is at plus 175 to win the NBA Finals. Boston's at minus 210. The money line for game one, Dallas is at plus 190. Boston at minus 230. Dallas is getting 6.5 points to cover in game one. I think these things will certainly change throughout the series as these games play out. It's going to be a fascinating series. And there's a number of reasons why I think this. We have covered this series on Old Man the Three Things. We have covered it in this episode with Zach Lowe. We have been exhaustive, I think, in this preview, which is why I'm so excited to see these games being played. I think the funnest part about the series, and Zach and I get into this during our mailbag, is this series feels like an onion. It really does feel like an onion. You look at an onion and you see this giant circular spherical object, and you might see Luka, or you might see Jayson Tatum. You might see Jalen Brown. You know, maybe if you peel back that first layer, you might see Kristaps Porzingis. The more and more you peel back the layers of this onion, though, you begin to see potentially some incredible intricacies in this matchup. And these are the things that Zach and I talk about. The one thing I'll say as it relates to these odds and as it relates to how I'm thinking about this series, I have said already, I think Boston is the favorite. They should be the favorite. They have been the best team in basketball all season. The road to get here for the Dallas Mavericks, where they beat 350-win teams. First team since the 2010 Lakers to reach the NBA Finals, having beaten 351 teams. They beat the Clippers. They beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, the number one seed in the West. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, who knocked off the defending champions. They are battle-tested. When I think about the Boston Celtics, they are battle-tested. I think about, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, new additions certainly, but guys who have been through the fire, and their core group, Joe Mazzulla, guys who have been in these situations. I think the adjustments in this series are going to be fascinating. I think the matchups potentially, including the cross matches, which is something Zach and I talk about in this episode, are going to be really fascinating. It could come down to who is the baddest dude on the court on a nightly basis. And if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, you have to feel pretty good about having Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on your team. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, you have to feel pretty good about having Jayson Tatum, Jalen Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, this series is going to be awesome. I can't wait to call it. I can't wait to be a part of it. I can't wait to watch it as a basketball fan. But again, Boston is the favorite going into this series, and we'll see how these odds shift as these games are played. This has been our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. We are this close to crowning an NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. That's code JJ for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org.
Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. One no sweat bet per new customer. Issued as one bonus bet based on amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
We're going to get to Zach Lowe. Just want to add on, we have Jalen Williams on this episode. Jalen is going to give us a quick synopsis of the things he learned about the playoffs during his first postseason berth as an NBA player. He also provides some insight on the Dallas Mavericks. And of course, we have the Old Men in the Three draft presented by New Era with Jalen. It's a very fun draft. I obviously feel like I won the draft. Jalen may have screwed himself with his 5th round pick, but remains to be seen. We'll listen to Ryan Cohen and see what the ultimate judgment is on who is the winner of the Old Man in 3 draft presented by New Era. Let's get to our mailbag with ESPN analyst, writer, and personality, friend of mine, Zach Lowe.
Let's set the table here for this series. How are you feeling overall about this matchup? I feel like the ghosts of the Celtics' recent past is muddying the judgment a little bit of this series. I'm not saying it's unfair. I think Dallas is the deserved Western Conference champion, meaning like there was no easy path for them. To me, this series, on paper at least, is setting up for number one, I think, fantastic basketball play, and number two, a terrific chess match between the two coaches. That's kind of overall how I'm looking at this, where, you know, how a series shakes out. Maybe you get a good Alfred game. Maybe you have a hot shooting game. Maybe Luka goes bonkers one game, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it could be 3-1 one team, or it could be a 7-game series.
You've really turned Alfred into a thing. Alfred is, he never went away, but he's really back, Alfred. Congratulations on recoining that. You didn't coin it. He exists as a character, but
he exists as a character.
Transformed him into a basketball character. Once it became clear that this was very likely to be the finals, I got very excited. First of all, you said chess match. Any game or series involving Luka is automatically exciting to me because he just raises so many questions for every defense. How are you going to guard this? How are you going to guard that? He knows, he has 17 counters in the bag for whatever you do. And so he's facing this incredible defense that can do a lot of things against him, but can't do some things. They can't switch 1 to 5 without giving him a matchup against Porzingis or Horford that he could really attack. So that chess match is always interesting. And the ghosts, it's so funny how this feels like kind of like a new and fresh finals, and yet we almost got this exact same finals 2 years ago. Like the Mavs were in the conference finals and the Celtics were in the finals. The Celtics have been hovering around a championship for so long. Dallas feels kind of new and their team is kind of new, but with Luka, they've gotten pretty close to being here. So it feels like both new and fresh, and also like we're getting these teams built around superstars that are 25 and 26 years old exactly at the time when you think, all right, they're like ready to win the big one. And both teams have changed a lot in the last 2 years. I think it's an awesome series. Awesome. I'm very excited.
I agree. Let's actually start with one of our mailbag questions. And again, thank you to everyone who on Twitter and Instagram sent in some questions, really thoughtful questions. Some were repetitive and redundant. So if I didn't pick your question, but it's asked in a different way, I apologize. This is from at W from DeBall. The best way the Celtics can slow Luka offensively without giving up a million open threes or leaving Kyrie open. I think we should start here because to me this is where the series starts. The most interesting part of the series. This is where the series starts. I want to start actually not even with coverages. I want to start with matchups.
Okay.
And where you think the Celtics go with the initial matchup.
So sometimes, I'll say this and it could look wrong for like a minute because sometimes coaches will junk up, like they'll use their not real matchups for the first 3 possessions of the game to think, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. And then they'll like flip into what you thought. So if I had to peg it for Boston, Jaylen Brown on Luka, that's been their preferred method. Obviously, they'll switch a ton, so who really cares? Drew on Kyrie. Tatum on Gafford. which is the pivot point now. Porzingis, I don't know who you'd rather put Porzingis on, Washington or Jones, and Derek White on the other one of those two players. I guess I would guess Porzingis on PJ Washington just because they've done that more. But given his shooting, that can be a little dangerous. But I do think whether it's the first possession or the first minute or the third minute, Boston is going to try to have Porzingis and Horford not be on the rim running centers to just sort of complicate the Mavs pick and roll.
I think we'll see that a lot. And Joe has shown a willingness to muck up matchups. A lot of the coaches now, they do this. And we saw it during the Indiana series, right?
Yeah. Same thing with Miles Turner.
With
Pascal.
Miles Turner, yep. They did it a lot. So you think Jalen and Luka, and in terms of, I want to reiterate your point. There are going to be so many bodies, different defenders, primary matchups, bringing the ball up the court that Luka will see. It's not going to be one guy, right? OKC, it was a lot of Lou Dort. LA Clippers, it was a lot of Terrence Mann. And he's going to manipulate matchups and get the guy he wants him.
Feels like 5 years
Doesn't
ago.
it feel?
I don't really even remember what happened.
I
do remember.
I was talking with the
happened,
Dunker Spot guys earlier today about the Sixers-Knicks series. How about that series?
It's a great time. It was a great
It was
time.
a great time in basketball.
Ultimately,
but it's
did not
so
lead
long
very
ago.
far. It was a fantastic series. But like Luka, all the perimeter guys are going to take their turn on Luka, whether it's like a switch with 7 on the shot clock and you're willing to live with Derek White on him, which is a matchup that hasn't gone well for the Celtics, or like Drew Holiday will take him as the primary guy for this stretch, and then Tatum will do it for this stretch. The pivot point to me is where are the Boston big men and what does Luka do in response? That's the interesting question.
Yeah, for sure. And let's assume for a second that is the route that Missoula goes, where KP and Al are on one of PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr.
Would you call them Alfreds? Are they going to be on Alfreds?
PJ and Derek, they're Alfreds.
Okay.
They didn't make my first annual All Alfred team, but that was just based on the regular season. I would certainly give them consideration for my postseason All Alfred team.
Who's below Alfred?
Who's below
like
Alfred?
the weapons guy? You know what? Let's not even do it. Let's just keep going. I'm sorry.
Lucius Fox.
Yeah, wow. You threw out the first name. You could have given me 50 guesses. I would have got Lucius.
So you've got Tatum on the rim runner. You probably at some point will see Jaylen Brown on the rim runner, I would assume. How does that change what Luka does in pick and roll? Does that then become, all right, I'm just going to go find the matchup and play one-on-one out instead of playing versus Minnesota where they're playing drop primarily for some games? They obviously mix it up a ton, particularly in game 3. Does it just become then an isolation game?
It could be, and like that's why Luka is so amazing, because there's 17 different answers to this question that he can have, and one of them is if you put Porzingis on Derek Jones Jr., I'll just have Derek Jones Jr. come screen for me, and you're going to be in drop coverage, and maybe I'll attack that, and I'll force a switch, and then I've got your 7-3 guy on a switch, and he's barbecue chicken. But the problem, the whole goal of Boston is, if Derek Jones Jr. or PJ Washington or whoever it is rolls to the rim, he's rolling into Lively or Gafford, right? Because those guys are going to be hanging on the baseline. And so it's almost like they're playing the pick and roll 3-on-3 instead of 2-on-2, which they would do if it was just like a normal pick and roll. But you'll see him say, all right, like, I don't really care who's guarding Gafford. You want to switch that? Let's try that. You don't want to switch that? Let's try another thing. But I think a lot of it is going to be, where's the big man? If he's on PJ Washington, PJ can pop for threes. If you drop, he's gonna make a lot of those plays, and he's just gonna prod and test where he can.
Joe is big on expected shot values. So my question, in terms of what Dallas would be trying to get out of those pick and rolls, let's say that they're insistent. Whoever is guarding Luka on the ball is insistent on not conceding the switch in a drop situation. To me, Washington and Derek Jones Jr. rolling into Tatum on Gafford, who's lurking on the baseline, it seems like they would be better served to pop for 3. And how much is Joe going to be willing to live with that? I think that's the question, right? As this series progresses, how much of, again, these are above the break threes for those guys. They've been phenomenal in the corner. How much are we willing to live with pop above the break threes in drop coverage.
This is the fascinating thing about Mazzulla. I think PJ could make 5 in a row and he'd be like, that's cool. Like, we're not going to overreact to that. Like, he has the will to just, like the Pacers. The Pacers just ate him up from mid-range. They shot some crazy percentage on mid-range, and he was like, that's cool. I'm cool with all of it. Like, just keep doing it. The math is going to win out for us. And he was right. Barely. But the thing about Luka is, so you're envisioning that situation where it's like Luka, PJ Washington, Porzingis drops back. PJ Washington, let's say he rolls. And so Luka is prodding. He's got a roller. He's got Lively. He's got the Rollers defender dropping back, and he's got Lively's defender hanging around. The greatness of Luka is he turns situations that look like you've won the math. Like, this is a low odds percentage play for Dallas. And he wins it anyway because he can make floaters. He can make step backs. He knows that that he can make floaters and step backs, so he'll fake it a little bit. And that's when you take that little fatal, like, half slide toward him. And all of a sudden, the passes you thought are gone are there for him. And like, that's why this guy is such a freaking
the pass to the corner too.
Yeah.
The late when he goes up to shoot.
That's the one that when he makes that pass, it's like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do. Like, it's over like this. It's like, and it can't be said enough that I think he's listed at 6'7". Sometimes people call him 6'8". Like, what are you, 6'4"?
I'm 6'4".
I mean, I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I claim 6 feet. So I don't know what it feels like to be 6'4". I don't know what it feels like to guard a guy who's 6'8". At that level. The 4 inches are like, it's a huge deal, right? That he's that big, like, just as a help defender, as the guy on him, he sees everything. He has everything in the bag.
I agree. Lots of Luka based questions. So I just want to, since we're on Luka right now, I want to get to a couple of them. Look, a couple of them are legacy questions. I think they're worth answering. The first one, based off credentials, this is from Naeem Muhammad, Coach N. At Coach N. Muhammad, based off credentials, Luka can retire now and make the Hall of Fame. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Yeah, agree.
Which is weird. It's weird. He's never won it. I'm just saying that. I don't have my computer in front of me. I'm just saying it. Snap. Take. Never won a championship. Never won an MVP. I think it's 5 straight first team All NBAs. So
5 straight. Yeah.
So that alone is like, I bet everybody who has done that is in the Hall of Fame without looking it up.
Right. Scoring title.
Universal recognition of being a top 3 to 4 NBA player for quite a while now. I'm going to say yes. Why not?
I would say yes too. I want to do this because it's always a fun exercise whenever these questions come up on basketballreference.com. By the way, MVP brought it up. So 5 straight first team All NBAs. He was 4th in this 5-year stretch. He was 4th, 6th, 5th, 8th, and 3rd. So he's got 5 top 8 MVP finishes during that 5-year run.
And he's been
Rookie of the Year.
He's been the odds-on favorite going into at least 2 seasons, and I bet he will be next year for a 3rd time, if it's indeed 2 before. I had him second on my fake ballot this year over SGA.
Hall of Fame probability on Basketball Reference, 41.2%.
That stat is
exceedingly
all
low. Exceedingly low. Yeah, you opted out of the vote. Good for you, man.
I sense a little snark there.
Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds? Or I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter. If you have, then you're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings, an official partner of the NBA. Here's how to play during the NBA playoffs. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Rebounds, points, assists, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. And for all first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Play Pick 6 from DraftKings, the new fantasy app that packs more fun into less time. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code JJ. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code JJ only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. If your family is like ours, then your dog is everyone in your family's best friend. And one of the easiest ways to show our dog Georgie that we love him is to treat him to a couple Pepperoni original beef flavor snacks. Pepperoni treats have the meaty, delectable taste and aroma that has dogs running for it. Real beef is the #1 ingredient. No grains, fillers, or artificial flavors. Treat your BFF to the ultimate beefy flavor indulgence. Pepperoni. Georgie knows exactly where we keep our pepperoni treats, and the second anyone in our family opens that cabinet, he gets excited. He really can't get enough of them. Be your best friend's best friend with pepperoni treats. Go to pepperoni.com. That's PUPPERONI.com to order pepperoni today. Protect your BFF status and give them the one thing they can't get enough of, pepperoni treats. All right, another legacy question at Bulls Central YT. Is this finals more important for Luka Doncic's legacy or Jayson Tatum's legacy?
It's the finals, man. Like it's either what you have one championship or zero. It's important for everybody, but I guess he's a year older and he's had more cracks at the elite stage of the NBA playoffs. I guess I would go Tatum only because if they don't win with a 64-win team that's dominated the whole season, that's dominated the whole playoffs, that had the East unfold for them the way it did, even if he plays very well, I would guess there would be more chatter about him losing the finals than there would about Luka, even though it would be a little ridiculous.
I think that's right. I think it matters equally depending on how you look at who wins, right? If Tatum wins, it's a huge boost for his legacy. There were a bunch of questions because the discourse over the last few days has been, is Jayson Tatum a top 5 player?
What do you think he's a top 5 player?
I think right now there's probably 2 or 3 guys that are top 2 or 3 guys, and then there's like 5 guys that are your traditional top 5 player.
It's that 5th spot that is a little bit blurry, but
yeah, I say let's call it 7 or 8 guys that are top 5 players.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I do think
I like
in
that
most
phrasing.
years there's usually 1 or 2 guys that are just not head and shoulders above everybody, but kind of in a different tier. I think this year, I think it's fair to say Luka and Jokic were in that tier. Joel, when he was healthy, was probably in that tier, at least in the regular season, right? He was that good.
Oh, no. I was
that good.
I was about to say, like, I would like to at some point in like August when nothing is going on, although the Olympics will probably be going on.
Yeah.
Spend like a couple hours just remembering Joel Embiid's season this year. I mean, it was just comical.
The one thing I'll say to your point about the chatter, if Boston doesn't win this, I mean, the chatter right now, I think is fairly toxic. If Boston doesn't win this,
What's toxic to you?
I think what's toxic is not treating this season, maybe not toxic. The Tatum stuff can be a little toxic. The nitpicking around him can be a little toxic, and more annoying than anything. I think what annoys me though, with regards to the Celtics, is not treating this team as a separate entity from past teams, and not contextualizing how this team got to this place, how Joe Mazzulla got to this place. If you want to talk about like where this fits in the Tatum Brown partnership, I think that's fair. Where this team specifically. Outside of that, most of the stuff with this year's Celtics team has just been more annoying to me than anything
You know
else.
what's crazy to think about? I was thinking about this the other day. Sorry to sidetrack us. So a lot of attention on the conference finals loss last year against Miami and the finals loss 2 years ago against the Warriors is like these what ifs for Boston. Did they blow it? Did they miss these opportunities? Think back to 2021 and how, Boston has passed on or not being able to consummate a million different trades for a million different superstars to keep this Tatum Brown machine rolling. 2021, they were 500. They were 36-36. They get wiped away in the first round by the Harden, Durant, Kyrie Nets. Brown's out for that series. Jaylen Brown's out for that series. He has a wrist injury. But Kemba's body has betrayed him. The young guys aren't ready. The free agent signings have gone bust. It's a 500 team that gets destroyed in the playoffs by a team where you're looking like, is our window already like on the way down? Is this the new super team that we're going to have to contend with? Like that was just 3 years ago. And it's crazy to think about how much they've turned over.
And they started the next season halfway through. They're
30 and 26, I think, when they trade for Derek White.
I think they were a 500 team at the halfway point.
Yeah.
So it's
to your point about how much has changed. Like that was 3 years ago. It's not long ago.
The last question, it's a fun one. Let's say the Hawks. This is from Barmello.
Wow, the Hawks?
Barbello Xanthony, quip and bounce. Let's say the Hawks keep Luka on draft night. Does Luka make multiple trips to the finals in the East with the Hawks?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like, I don't even care who would still be on the team now, what the team would look like, who to be. Luka is this good. Luka is a guy who, by himself, with health and competent team building around him, at this point in his career, you're going to approach 50 wins every single season. And he's shown that if he gets into playoffs, you can throw the records out because he's a killer.
Okay. One more thing. This is what's annoying about the Celtics stuff.
Oh, good. Because I have more too.
Yeah. This is what's annoying. The way we talk about this year's team is framed by something that happened in the past that they can't change. If they don't win the finals, by all means, like have whatever conversation you want and have some real assessments on this year's team and Tatum and Brown. I think that is fair. And Missoula, I think that is absolutely fair. But this whole season, as they're steamrolling everyone, as they've got a top offense, a top defense, a historical point differential, it always comes back to something they can't change. It comes back to something that has already happened in the past with a different group, with a different coach. That's what's annoying to me.
And I do think they have a point. Now, every team can veer into what I would call righteous indignation sometimes about media coverage, and that kind of annoys me, like tisk you media.
Yeah.
But I do think it's not unfair of them to get a little angry at the Brown Tatum coverage, because I do feel like some of that is almost designed not maybe to foment division within the team, but you know that that's a potential consequence of it, and you roll with it anyway. So Perk and I had this argument on TV last week. He was all in on like, this is Jaylen Brown's team now. It's Jaylen Brown's team. And I said, okay, that's like a cool, and we said it's on TV. This is not inside baseball. I said, that's a cool thing to say. Like, what does it actually mean? Are you saying that if Jaylen Brown runs 15 pick and rolls per 100 possessions right now and Tatum runs 25, which is more or less accurate, that you should flip that on its head and it should go 30 Brown, 15 Tatum? Is that, because I think your team is like demonstrably worse if you do that. And then today on Get Up, and I love Get Up, I love Greeny, but we're having this conversation about what if the Celtics win, but Brown gets finals MVP and not Tatum? What does that mean for Tatum? And I'm like, how about they win? How about winning is the whole thing? It's like, are we really going to do this? Just win. Sorry. I said that on TV too. Again, no inside baseball. I said all this. They like when I'm cantankerous.
Cantankerous. It's a great word. And I like when you're cantankerous too. We kind of answered this, the drip god with 2 P's and an underscore.
That's me, by the way. That's a pseudonym for me.
I know.
It's one of my burners.
I see the shirt. Preston, what does it say about the Boston Celtics if they lose? Let's kind of end the conversation here, because I went on a sports radio show in Boston. It was an obligation.
It became a kerfuffle.
From DraftKings. I think those guys were fine. It was a fine conversation. What does it say about the Boston Celtics if they lose? So I want to make this point on this show, which is, barring a major injury where you lose a Giannis, let's say, right? I think in general, the best team wins a playoff series. That's the whole point of a 7-game series. And by the way, in hockey, there's a lot more randomness to this. So the best team doesn't always win. Sometimes they do. Sometimes teams are more evenly matched. The thing with basketball and the NBA, these guys are so good. And the playoffs and a series is all about problem solving. Sometimes there's a problem that your team can't solve. Luka could be that problem. KP could be that problem for the Dallas Mavericks, right? Jaylen Brown in transition might be that. I don't know. I don't know what the problems that are like concrete that Luka will be a problem. But the problems that will be presented during the series, you have to solve those in real time. Generally speaking, the best team wins. I can say that I think the Boston Celtics were the best team in the regular season. And I can say, you know what? I think, and I believe this, the two best teams in the NBA for the playoffs are meeting in the finals right now. That's what I believe. And if Dallas wins, it means Dallas is the better team.
As you were describing the question that you were posed on this radio interview, what does it say about the Celtics if they don't win? First of all, we can just watch the series. We don't need to be like, let's posit this outcome. The series is going to be over soon, one way or another. Yeah. Number two, it might say nothing about the Boston Celtics. It might say that the Dallas Mavericks are effing awesome and just won a 4-3 series in epic fashion. Like that's what it might say.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's also, it's interesting, like there's the best team and then there's the best team when these two teams play each other. Like over 100 games against the entire NBA, Boston might be the best team. Guess what? That's not what this is. It's like these two teams going head to head 7 times. Yep. Which one of you wins the most games? That's a fair...
this is from Nation MFFL, MFL Nation, Mavs fan. If you're Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks, how would you guard the Celtics starting five? So we touched on how the Celtics might match up with Dallas. Would you trap and scramble on all ball screens? Would you switch everything if Porzingis is healthy for game one? Just thoughts overall on Dallas's defensive strategy against the Boston Celtics. What are sort of the, I don't know if it's like inflection points or choke points but like there's certain things that you have to do against the Celtics to stay out of trouble. As it relates to how Dallas matches up, what are those key things for you?
So if you're looking to be a little worried as a Boston fan, I'm not saying you should be worried. You have the best team. But I think Boston's offense is at its best when it has a small guard to pick on every single possession down the floor. Where's Tyrese Halliburton? Where's Tyler Hero? Where's Darius Garland? That makes our life simple. We can get into our complicated, beautiful offense where we screen and slip and throw passes all over the floor and spray out for threes. But we're going to get into it every time by finding Darius Garland, having his man screen for Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, and you're either going to switch, and we got to be diligent about punishing that switch because the size advantage is enormous, or you're going to double, and we have to just make the simple pass until we get to the simple shot and the possession is over. I don't really think Dallas offers that kind of player. The closest would be Kyrie, at least among the starters. He's 6'2". He plays much bigger than 6'2". All those guys I named, he offers much more resistance physically than any of those guys. He's strong. He's tough. He does not project as a 6'2" player. Luka is a guy that if you're going to attack him, you attack more with like decisive straight line, quick twitch, speed. And that's not the MO as athletic or fast or whatever as Tatum and Brown are. That's kind of not like, they're not that smooth doing that all the time. Just like catch, go, boom. They can. It's just not all the time. So if I'm Dallas, to answer this reader's question, I am avoiding putting two on the ball aggressively as much as I can. And I'm going to play them a little softer in coverages or just switch as many things as I can. And if Tatum punishes Kyrie one-on-one, like I gotta see that happen. I would even switch with Lively. Gafford's a little dicier when he's in the game. I might just play drop coverage with him and figure it out from there. But I'm trying to limit their threes, and I'm going to make them play in isolation because I don't think that I have a matchup necessarily that's like super easy for you to just bulldoze. That's just my quick take.
All right. I think in general, that is a very solid, well-argued, informed, quick take.
I'm not saying it's going to work.
No. I like it. So I was thinking about, because I called a number of the games in the Clippers series, and I was thinking about the Minnesota series. Did a whole edit on all of Anthony Edwards' ISOs in that series. So a couple things really jumped out. Number one, Minnesota has terrible spacing. And not just because Gobert's on the floor. I mean, they are undisciplined in their spacing. They are undisciplined. Like, I talked about this last week. You're in the left slot. Anthony Edwards is 10 feet away from you. There's no one in the left corner. Go to the left corner.
You'll see times where, like, guys will be next to each other, and one of them will be like, you got to get, literally, you'll see them wave them away. Like, you got to get out of here, man.
They never quite figured that out. And against this Dallas Mavericks defense, you have to be super disciplined in your spacing. Holmgren was the only guy that approximates what KP does as a spacer in terms of how they went through the West and in terms of who the X5 matchups were. So Zubats, Gobert, that they were sort of able in some ways to flood the box, which they did a lot with Lively and Gafford. You combine that with the undisciplined spacing, it was like sometimes you're watching Anthony Edwards, you're like, how are you going to create a shot out of this?
You freeze those and you freeze those possessions or slow them down. It's just arms everywhere, arms. And
so this is where I think, as good as PJ is and has been in the playoffs, as good as Derek Jones Jr. is and has been in the playoffs, and as good as that two-headed monster on the back line, as good as those guys are, there's going to be more pressure on them to not get beat and not get in a situation where you have to overhelp. Then you factor in Kyrie and Luka. Look, Luka's been very active. His blow-by percentage is still very poor. They have a bunch of guys that can blow by Luka. So I think if I'm thinking about this series and like, okay, we talked about the Luka thing, solving that problem. That's going to be a bitch to solve. I think in general, the spacing and the shooting for Boston, regardless of how you match up, there is some pressure points that you can attack. I believe that because of the personnel that Boston has.
So the Porzingis variable is so big. That's why. He's just a different level shooter than Horford. Quicker release, more willing to take long threes. Like you've talked a lot about you've talked about how spacing is 29 feet.
Yeah, his average shot distance is 27 feet.
It's a big deal. And that's also why I said, particularly when Lively's in the game, I wonder, I bet we'll see him switch more than he's ever switched before. He's a pretty capable switch defender, and against the Porzingis pick and pop particularly, I don't think they're going to be willing to just let him rain wide open threes. Gafford's going to be a different story and a different challenge, but I think Lively can do it. And should we answer Nikias's question? Because that is my...
that's fine. Yeah, we can answer Nikias's question. I had a point I wanted to make. Yeah. If you're done. Okay, so the point I want to make, this is another key sort of thing for me. Now we're sort of starting to unpack this beyond just the obvious stuff.
Yeah.
When I think about, and you touched on this a little bit, I do want to make the point, by the way, it's not just, hey, Darius Garland, come up here and guard this pick and roll. I think what Boston has gotten a lot better at, particularly this year, is using Tatum and Brown as screeners, whether it's in a pick and roll, whether it's out of their V2 set, sometimes even just a simple pin down where you don't want to switch. And so they get essentially a free screen on a Tyrese Haliburton or a free screen on Darius, not off the ball. I mean, not on the ball, but off the ball. And if there is a switch and all of a sudden Tatum is posting you at the foul line, I think that's a big difference this year from when I've watched them in the past. Not that they never did in the past. They're using it more. Those guys as off-ball screeners. They're using it more. But the key that I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Jason Kidd essentially urged Luka to play faster, right? So we saw the pace pick up, his throw ahead, get ahead passes, whatever you call them. I call them throw ahead passes. Those are important parts of their offense. When I think about Boston, Jaylen Brown in transition, important parts of their offense. I think overall, you can point to Luka and you can point to the spacing and the shooting of Boston and say, okay, they've got an advantage here and they've got an advantage here. how much does pace and just the ability to score easy baskets in transition factor into the series?
I think it's huge. And I think it's one of the fun things about a series, like two great teams facing each other over and over again. The margins for 7 games or even within a game are sometimes going to swing on like these, Dallas got 8 points in transition that you didn't think they were going to be able to get. And I haven't looked quite as deeply on the other side of the ball, but I know Boston has been the number one transition defense essentially start to finish this year. And what you said about Luka is exactly right. I think the Luka-Kyrie chemistry has been one of the most fun stories in the league this year. And one of the ways that has sort of manifested is that Luka has adapted and accepted Kyrie's kind of preferred pace of play on a lot of possessions. The other side, Dallas's defense has been a complete sea change in the last 40 games. They've been a very good transition defense too. Neither team turns it over very much, and neither team forces very many turnovers. So any like extra batch of turnovers one way or the other that creates easy points, like that's a game right there. That could swing a game. Other than that, it's going to be live rebounds and just, I think there's been so much attention on Boston's shot selection and do they shoot too many threes? Do they need to get to the rim more? Blah, blah, blah. And I think that conversation has been totally fair and sometimes accurate. I think an under discussed part of why they shoot so many threes is that it really helps their transition defense because they've got 3 guys that are ready, are spotted up around the arc that are ready to get back on defense all the time.
They crash out of the corners.
And they're not missing. If they're not going to the rim as much, they're not. The rim miss is one of the most damaging events in basketball now. Like the rim miss and fall out of bounds is just, it turns into 3 points every single time for the other team.
All right. Nikias asked, assuming Boston's we blinked adjustment is blitzing Luka, meaning we don't want to put 2 on the ball, but unfortunately we have to.
You have broken our drop coverage.
Yeah. Yes. Since they don't really want to do that, what would be the equivalent for Dallas?
Well, first, I'll answer the second part first. But I do want to get your take on is blitzing a we blinked adjustment, and do you think we will see them blitz and when and where? But to Nikias' point, I was thinking about that because Dallas has been such a steady team that particularly defensively doesn't necessarily rely on any particular single pick and roll coverage more than the others, or there's not a thing that you see them do this and it's like, oh, that's just. So the only answer I could come up with was if suddenly we see Kleba at the 5 again. And that is not
There was a question on here about Kleba, and I'm glad you brought him up.
And it's not even that's a we blinked thing because the Mavs have always been pretty damn good with Kleba at the 5, including almost getting to the finals 2 years ago. But it doesn't feel like they want to play that way anymore with Lively and Gafford. And clearly they shouldn't feel any need to because they've been awesome with Lively and Gafford. I feel like if we do see that, it will be because something has gone wrong with Boston mucking up their spacing too much on offense and like, okay, we've just got to loosen the floor and play 5 shooters at the same time. That was the only thing I could come up with.
Okay. I like it. So no zone for you. No zone for you.
We'll see. Dallas played some zone against Minnesota. Boston played some zone against Indiana too, which was more zone than probably they've played in a long time.
Back on Kleba, Zach basically answered this, but Steven _ rules 77 asks, how critical is Maxi Kleba going to be as a switchable defender and as someone who can cash in a couple threes? So to the point about matchups, I think there is interesting. It goes back to our original point about guarding Luka. And I think when you talk about the cross matching and how that can sometimes, we saw it so much more than I remember this year across the NBA. So when you talk about the cross matching, fucking up your spacing, right? Having Kleba out there is sort of the antidote to that, right? So if you believe Luka, Kyrie can create an advantage one-on-one, which they pretty much can against anyone, then having Kleba out there is super important. His ability, I think, he's a guy and we've seen him do it, by the way. He's a swing a game guy where he can make 4 or 5 threes and help win you a game because he just changes the complete dynamic of how you're guarding Kyrie and Luka.
Yeah, do you worry that I've never played for an NBA team, obviously never worked for one. No, I did not. Do you worry about
I thought we only had players on.
Okay, all right, enough. Do you worry that it's kind of related to, there's been a whole undercurrent of why don't they just start Lively over Gafford as the best plus minus on the team? Do you worry that doing that with Kleba, putting Kleba at the 5, despite his switching, compromises your rim protection too much, and B, sends a signal to the rest of the team that like, we're in trouble. Like we're doing this from it's the reason, it's one of the reasons given for why kids should stick with Gafford in the starting 5. I think he should, because just whatever they're doing is working, and this, who cares? But I have heard the counter argument be like, well, why would you want to send the signal to your team that something has gone wrong with your team?
Okay. So I think it's an adjustment, and I think teams know when you're adjusting to something, and I think good coaches can explain that in a way, and you've probably already talked about that, and you probably, as players, you've talked about that internally, right? So I don't view that as like, oh, Jason Kidd is in panic mode.
People aren't going to be looking around like, where'd this come from?
And they've done it before.
Yeah.
They've done it before. The point I want to make, which I think is important here, is on the Gafford Lively thing, or just like scrapping, is twofold. Number one, I think there's real value in continuity of rotation. Certainly game to game, series to series. Like Joe talked about this to us during the Indiana series. He told his guys, like, guys, this is not a bench series. You know, there are times that it's a bench series where you guys are going to get 18 to 20 minutes and have a big role. You might only get 8 minutes. You might only get 6 minutes, right? It wasn't a bench series for them. So I think there's value in continuity of rotations. But I also think at times, and we've seen this happen in the playoffs, 2015, Iguodala entering the starting lineup. Like this stuff. No, but
that 2015 series.
Yeah. No.
I thought you were going to bring it up and not me.
There was no adjustment.
Yeah, Iguodala.
No, but I'm saying you insert a guy into the rotation, into the starting lineup, and it can help swing a series. So you have to be open to these things, is all I'm saying. And it's not an indictment on anyone.
I think he's a big wild card in the series. I think what Kleba can give them and what form that takes. I mean, there have been games, talking about matchups again, there have been games in the past, this season, last season, previous seasons, where he's been their primary defender on Jayson Tatum for stretches of the game. Not a switch defender, but just like, hey, you're the best we got. Give it a shot.
Yeah. All right. While we're on the topic of X factors and Kleba, who is the most important Alfred in this series? This is from @BasketballLens, the Basketball Lens.
Well, so like this is where I'm confused about the wide malleability of who counts as an Alfred. So like Derek White has superseded Alfred status. So it's got to be like
we did our first annual all Alfred team.
Derek White was on it,
AKA the Derek White All-Stars. No, this was a month ago. We did the show for our Islands in the League presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Got to get it in there. You like that. And I said Derek White is ineligible because to me, he has graduated beyond Alfred status. So Alfred, to me, is a supporting character who has moments of stardom. Okay. When you're thinking about Kristaps Porzingis is not an Alfred to me.
Too good.
Right? He's too accomplished. He's too good. Right. So the Alfreds to me in this series are the two-headed monster from Dallas. It's Derek Jones Jr. PJ Washington probably on the cusp of not being an Alfred anymore, based on, some of the role that he had in Charlotte, but then kind of fitting in. Like Aaron Gordon's the hardest one to me because I'm like, I don't think he's an Alfred.
No, he's higher than
an Alfred.
So the only Alfreds in Boston's rotation are Pritchard and Hauser. If we go top 8,
I'll say at this point in his career, Al Horford's probably an Alfred. He is Alfred.
Yeah. I am go. So you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I'm going to go specifically among the two-headed monster with Derek Lively. I think he has been just so sensational start to finish and crescendoing as the playoffs goes on. Obviously, he had the head injury that he recovered from. Then he got hit in the head again. I think he's just been special good on both ends of the floor. And this is obviously going to be the ultimate test of a rookie center going against a defense that's going to give him different looks and different schemes. And particularly when Porzingis is out of the game, is going to give him an enormous size advantage around the rim as a rebounder, as a playmaker. And I think he's got to squeeze every bit of that advantage out for Dallas to win. I think he has to be, like, at times if not for the whole series, the third best Maverick.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Depending on matchups, I think you could make an argument for PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Being as important as anyone. I'm going to counter the Lively thing just because you went with the Dallas side. I'll go with the Celtics side. I'm going to counter with Al Horford.
Love it.
And the reason is, I think about the 3-point shot, and thus far, and Game 4 was probably the exception to this. I could go back and look at other games, but Game 4 was the one that stood out to me, where up until that point, it felt like a lot of teams were saying, all right, what are we willing to give up against the Boston Celtics? And they were willing to give up Al Horford spot up threes. And then he fucking torched Indiana in Game 3. And they said, no more of that. No more of that. I mean, they switched everything in Game 4, right? No more of that. So for a game, and Alfred could win you a game in a playoff series, right? Al Horford could win you a game with his 3-point shooting. On the other side of the basketball, I think about defensively, where he has been the one guy where teams have really gone at him. He's not a weak point, but with certain lineups, he is the weakest point.
What else are you going to do?
What else are you going to do? Exactly.
Go at Drew Holiday?
And Cleveland in particular, ton of success attacking him in drop coverage. Then you go to Game 5, and they're 4 for 18 against him when he's the primary defender. So he's a guy, to me, he's the key Alfred, and there's not many of them, but he's the key Alfred for the Boston Celtics.
I think it's a great point. And it's funny, that Cleveland series, he did not look good against Donovan Mitchell in drop coverage. On switches were like a no-go. Against Darius Garland in the clinching game, he swatted him at the rim a couple of times. And the threes always look good. I always think an Al 3 is like going in, but you got to live with something. And we should mention Al Horford. What is Al, 38 years old?
Yeah, I think he just turned 38.
Beloved. How many years did you play with Al? You got at least a year in Philly, right? No.
We was so funny.
You didn't overlap in Philly?
Didn't overlap with Al. Al and I competed against each other a ton, obviously, because he came in the year after me. We had some battles in the playoffs when he was on the Celtics. We had battles when he was on the Hawks. We're having lunch together. I'm sitting there and he having lunch, and he stops by our hotel because they were staying at the nicer hotel. But he stops by our hotel with some of the Sixers guys, and he sat down with me for a while, and we were just chatting. And he said to me, he goes, one of the reasons I signed with the Sixers was because they told me you were going to be back.
That's right.
And I wanted to play 2-man game with you.
That's right.
And I was like, shit, man. I wish I would have known that. But so we never overlapped.
I forgot about that. Forgive my error. I do think it's interesting. I guess I love Al. He's one of my all-time favorite players to cover and think about. I guess he's just a level below the stratosphere where a huge storyline in this series would be, can they win one for Al? He's not like to the end of John Stockton's career or whatever, or Malone's career. It's like, can we get this guy a title? You don't hear that about Al to that level.
We put up the graphic a few times, but you're right in the sense that if Chris Paul was on the Celtics right now, we'd be talking about that more.
Yeah. It's
a different sort of, level.
But he's a damn accomplished player in his own right and beloved by teammates all over the place.
I had highlighted a bunch of these, and we are kind of running out of time, but there's a couple more that I absolutely want to get to. So there was a pace question in here. This is the one guy I don't think we've really talked about enough. And so I want to talk about him because I thought he was so important, as particularly at the beginning of that Indiana Pacers series. And this is from Chase Mendigral, at Chase Mendigral. What do you think the Drew Holiday usage will be in the finals, assuming he has Luka on him? Will he be used more as a screener or in possible ISO scenarios? Also, do you think Gafford will struggle with Porzingis' floor spacing in the pick and pop game? So we already covered that. Let's talk Drew Holiday. The one point I want to make, because we did the matchups where we thought this is potentially how Boston could match up with Dallas. I think when you look at Derek White and his on-ball usage and his effectiveness in the pick and roll, whether it's been with Tatum or whether it's been with Porzingis, you would assume that Luka's not going to take that matchup, and you would assume that Luka's going to take the Drew matchup.
That is how they have done it in the past. And I agree with you, by the way. Boston's best offense almost always involves Derek White, like on the ball or right in the thick of it. Yes, I believe he will be on Drew. We will see Drew Holiday used as a pick and roll screener more than he has in any individual matchup so far in this series. And I like the idea of like, Drew can play bully ball against bigger guys. I don't think he can bully Luka, but he's a nasty, nasty dude. And like, it's one thing for him to run over Halliburton and like he wiped that matchup out of the series real fast against Indiana. They went back to it here and there because they didn't have any other choices, but he can bully bigger guys. And I just thought like he was so good against Indiana. And I remember having a conversation with someone on another team at the beginning of the year. And you heard similar sentiments like this around the league. Like, man, I don't know if this is what this person's saying to me. I don't know if the Celtics really did they have to give up that much for Drew Holiday. Like they probably could have got Alex Caruso for a lot less or a little bit less. And maybe like given that Drew's going to have a small offensive role, like is there really that much of a difference? And my counter, and I wish these guys could come on the podcast and verify this, was always like, there's going to be a game in the playoffs or 2 or 3 where Drew Holiday scores 27 points. And it's like, oh, Alex Caruso wouldn't be able to do that. And like that game happened against Indiana. Like that guy is so goddamn good. Like talk about legacy guys. Like again, he's I guess a status below where we talk about the legacy, but I think he's a one-time All-Star? Still two-time All-Star, that's right. And
bunch of all defensive teams now.
Yeah,
there was some
one All-Star
sporadicness
was way
to it
back
now.
in Philly.
Yeah, exactly.
But like this would be 2 titles as sort of like the missing piece guy on 2 great teams. It would be kind of a cool championship for him.
For sure. I like him, by the way, in the short roll.
He's great.
Because of their spacing, his passing, he can score. And to your point about, you're right in the sense that like they're not going to say, all right, Drew, we're going to throw it to you 10 times in the post and go play bully ball. But think about the end of game 3. Think about 2 times in game 4 where he's got that drive going left against a bigger player, and he just uses his body to shield him off and scores through contact. Like he can do it. So I like him as a screener in the short roll. I like that a lot.
It's interesting. I'm sorry, this just jogged my memory. It's interesting you said they're not going to post him up 10 times and say play bully ball. Against Indiana, when they had Halliburton on him, I was like, post him up every single time. Like I would have posted him up 10 times in a row. Would that have been stupid? I would have just been like, go ahead, if they're going to put Halliburton on you, I'm going to post you up every single time.
Yeah. And it was a bad matchup for Indiana. It was just a bad
Dallas
matchup.
doesn't really have that kind of defender.
All right, 2 more because I want to get to both of these. I think this is a simple one. We'll stay on this, and then I want to get to one sort of big picture conversation that we brought up on the podcast before. I'm sure you've talked about it. I want to get to your thoughts on that and have a discussion around that. This is from Kevin. I mean, is it Moynihan? Is it Monahan? Is it Monahan? I don't know. But Kevin Monahan, 24.
This was supposed to be a triumphal moment in Kevin's life.
I know. I'm sorry, Kev. I'm sorry. I'm going to say Monahan. Can Boston win if they don't shoot over 35% from 3?
Yeah, I'm sure they can, but
the numbers suggest, right? We put this graphic up during the Pacers series. The numbers suggest they're one of the greatest teams ever when they shoot over 35%. And I think they're an under 500 team when they shoot under 35%. And that's including playoffs, right? 3-point shot is going to be huge in this series. I think it's a fair way to end this conversation because we've covered so much and we've gotten to their spacing and we've gotten to how Dallas has played other teams. Let's go back to that Oklahoma City series. Dallas makes shots. And I'm not simplifying this down to just Dallas made shots when they needed to and Oklahoma City didn't. But against Luka, against Kyrie, against just a very formidable defense, I have to think the 3-point shooting, and Joe's a math guy, the 3-point shooting may be the most important thing in this beyond just like, can we stop Luka?
So, sure, there are ways for them to win if they shoot 34, 33.5%. Anything below that gets dangerous. But just for the sake of entertainment, I will go no. Just because I don't know that I have enough faith in Boston's resourcefulness on offense and ability to scrounge points in other ways. Like, this is not an offensive rebounding team, despite the corner crash point you've made a bunch of times. It's not a free throw team.
They're not.
It's not
the
a
numbers-wise, they said they're not an elite offensive rebound team.
It's not a rim team. So I will say if they shoot 35% or below 35% against the Mavs over 7-game series, the Mavs will win the series.
Here's a question I have for you on this very topic.
I don't feel great about it.
No. Here's a question I have for you on this very topic. Let's break it down a little bit and talk about one guy. Let's say for a second that Kristaps Porzingis shoots high 40s and he's hitting 3 to 5 threes a game. And the other guys are struggling. And Tatum and Brown say, we're just going to put our head down and drive. And the spacing that Porzingis has created allows them to score at the rim. That's where I think that's why I always come back to KP for this matchup. I really do.
Because the spacing
or out. You know,
but the spacing, to your point, it's different with Porzingis. The threat of Porzingis out there is just the lane is so much more open. That's why I said there are pathways to do it, but if I'm going a yes or no pick, I'll go Dallas wins in that scenario.
Okay. We have discussed this a little bit. This is from Justin at Open Step Back. We're going to have six straight different champions. There's all of the incoming tax aprons. Is this parity what the league wants? Will this be the new normal with how hard it is to sustain good teams? There's another question there about big threes and the importance of, this person said players 4 through 12. I would argue it's probably 4 through 8 or 9, or 3 through 8 or 9, depending on your views on big threes. But just overall, the implications of 6 straight different champions. What I thought was particularly in the West, a regular season that, if I had to sum it up, was parity outside of the really bad teams. And now that the aprons are coming, this second apron is coming, and it's going to limit what teams can do in terms of transactions. Like, is this going to be the new normal? And is this good for the league?
I think it's going to be closer to the new normal than whatever you want to say came before it. You know, the Bulls winning 6 and 8 years, or, I mean, the Spurs won $1 million over a long period of time. You know, the Lakers three-peat, the Warriors, whatever the Warriors were, which was a kind of a fluky, you know, Durant cap spike kind of thing. I do think something is going on. It's not totally random. The apron is a big deal, and I do think this will be closer to the new normal than what came before it. But like before the Lakers did it in the late 80s, repeat champions between the Russell Celtics and the Lakers, it was like a very hard thing to do. It was a huge deal when the Lakers won 2 championships in a row.
Some of that was expansion.
Yeah.
Some of that was the ABA-NBA merger and players moving around more. Some of that was free agency, right? That was 1976 is when Oscar Robertson won his case. 1977 was the first year of real free agent. Well, I think it was some form of restricted free agency, and you had to compensate the team that you left. But it wasn't until 1987, John Concac, that we had real unrestricted free agency. So I think when you look at that period, there's context to that. I think when you look at the modern NBA, this is really kind of unheard of.
And look, there'll be a repeat champion at some point. Maybe Boston is about to win the first of 2 straight. Who knows? But
Denver could get back next year. Yeah.
We all thought Denver would do better in the playoffs than they did, I think, this year. So it'll happen, but I do think this is closer. And like, look at the teams that are facing like really tough financial decisions immediately. Denver for one, Minnesota for another. Like, these are contending level teams. Oklahoma City's been planning for this already. Like, what is life going to look like when all our guys have to get paid? And you know, I don't think there will ever be another cap spike event like what enabled the Warriors to be so dominant for so long. That was like a black swan event in the NBA. So I do think this will be, and it is what the league wants for sure. Like, they want every fan base, or as many as possible, to come into the season feeling like, hey, if things go right for us, we got a shot.
Good stuff, Zach. Appreciate you coming by the studio. Always fun to chop it up.
Beautiful space, by the way. You've done very well here.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right, let's get to the Old Man of 3 draft presented by New Era with Jalen Williams. Sorry about the way the season ended, my friend.
It is what it is. It was fun, though, for sure.
Playoffs are different, man. They're so fun.
Yeah.
They're so fun.
Yeah, it was high-level basketball. It was fun to be a part of that.
Isn't it fun, the tactical and strategical part of, like, it's just so different than the regular season?
Yeah. I didn't even know what to expect going into like any of the series. So it was just kind of a trial run is what it felt like. We were just kind of I mean, at least for me personally, I was just kind of going through, just trying to figure out what works.
Yeah. Hey, real quick before we get to the draft, Jalen, did want to ask you about Dallas specifically. And we all sort of know the problem that Luka Doncic presents, the problem that Kyrie Irving presents. As you're sort of thinking about them versus the Celtics, are there any big takeaways you had about the Mavericks from your series that sort of stood out that can be applied to this series against the Celtics?
Looking back on our series, I still think we did defensively. I thought we did a really good job. I think the biggest thing with us was we just had there's a couple games where we had timely breakdowns. And I think the biggest thing is with them, they go on runs they go on really loud runs because of the rate they shoot threes. So when they're up 10, it's really easy to kind of panic and kind of get out of what works for you. And I think there was just kind of points in our game where we did that and tried to force a couple things. And then now 10 is 15 and, you're kind of just playing from behind the whole game. So up 10, down 10, you kind of just got to stick with it. And then whatever your game plan is, just kind of live and die by that.
Yeah.
With a couple of weeks to process, we were just talking about this, with a couple of weeks to process at the end of this run for you, and we've talked with you a ton about how great a season it was. What's your overall perspective on what you accomplished this year, and then also what the team accomplished?
I think for myself, I don't really give too much weight into the regular season. I think now, especially now that it's off season for me, the playoffs were a good thing to kind of gauge where I'm actually at. So it's kind of easy to get lost in a lot of the regular season stuff, but just kind of looking for that. I think I didn't play as well as I wanted to for the playoffs. So I think that's kind of been my main focus. So I haven't really given a lot of thought into the season, but as a team, I thought we had a really good year of growth. And, I don't think many people expected us to, be where we were, especially for the whole season. We were pretty much, the one, or kind of in that 1 to 3 range. So thought we did a really good job there, kind of sticking together through that and being as young as we were. Obviously being able to win a playoff series, take Dallas to 6, and kind of keep every one of those games competitive and close to. I think we had a really successful year, a lot to kind of build on. I think everybody's going into the summer knowing kind of what they want to work on with a clear view. But yeah, I thought we had a really, really great year. And it was really fun that was probably the most fun I've had playing basketball, especially with that group of guys. So it was really, really fun. I thought we got really close.
Is it weird? The only sort of parallel that I have from my career was the year we made the finals in 2009, where I think Dwight and Jameer were in their 5th year. Courtney Lee was a rookie. We obviously had some vets with Turk and Rashard. I was in my 3rd year. But there's something about you get to that point, and for you guys, it was the conference semifinals. And I remember our first conversation, we talked about expectations, right? The very first podcast you ever came on, we talked about expectations right before the season started. And so it's weird to as a competitor, to feel good about what you were able to do if it doesn't end the way you want it to. Yeah. But it's also valuable, I think, to take something from the experience where, I mean, it sounds like you really valued the taste of the playoffs that you got this year.
Yeah. I think you can't take being in the playoffs for granted. I think Mark gave us this crazy stat with just like Al Horford being there 15 times and not, obviously not getting to the end goal of winning one. And it's kind of just having to restart from scratch every year and kind of going through that whole thing. It's they're not really guaranteed. I'm trying to use guys that are in the playoffs right now. I think Drew Holiday would go for a year and then there'd be a 3-year gap where he doesn't go to the playoffs or doesn't make it as far as he is. So I think playoffs are really valuable and something that not every year is promised. We had a healthy year, knock on wood, and health isn't always promised. The team may change and stuff like that. So not taking that for granted and being able to learn from, like for me, like what I didn't do well or what I think I can improve on. I think the playoffs is really playing the same team that's scouting you over and over again. And, they kind of attack whatever weaknesses they think you have. So, when it is done, you can kind of see what they attacked, and that's something that you can work on. It's probably like the most detailed look you can kind of get at your game. So I'm kind of taking that and using that as an experience and then kind of moving my summer towards that.
That's great stuff, man. That really is. Love that perspective. All right, let's get to the draft. Before we begin, we wanted to give a shout out to New Era, the official cap of the NBA, now the official headwear of OM3. You can support your favorite team by wearing the same caps that the players do, or show off your personal style with exclusive drops. Shop headwear at apparel and get 10% off when you go to neweracap.com and use code OLDMAN at checkout. That's 10% off your order using promo code OLDMAN. Some exclusions apply, and visit neweracap.com/OM3 if you want to see Tommy and my favorites. And New Era we just got our first batch.
Yeah, Doug, we got some for you.
Old Man and 3 hats. Very excited about this. I guess this is me shooting a basketball, which it is. It's like literally, I think they took my silhouette of a picture shooting a basketball and made this one. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is exclusive to guests. So I think we're sending you this one. We'll send you all the hats, Jalen. All right, let's get to the draft. Jalen, you picked the topic. The topic is best TV show theme songs, and I cannot fucking wait for this one.
This is a loaded one.
Yeah, there's so many.
So many.
You start.
Oh, it's definitely Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's number one. So anybody that had that at one, I'm sorry, but that is the greatest one.
It's also number one on my list.
Yeah,
and I knew you were going to pick that, and I also know what Tommy's going to pick with his number one pick.
Fresh Prince is a great number one pick. There's no argument there. I'm going Succession.
Oh my God, I was right.
I'm going Succession, number one. To me, I wouldn't say it's better than Fresh Prince, but it is in the conversation for the top 2, top 3 of all time. Nick, the guy who made it, is a friend of mine, so I'm a little biased, but even if he was not, I love it. It's perfect. It's iconic. It's an instant classic.
We just recorded with Zach Lowe, and Zach can be a little cantankerous. And he said, I think it was in reference to Succession, potentially some of the other ones on this list. A lot of them, the newer sort of TV drama theme songs, they can be a little long-winded. The opening credits and the song can be a little long-winded. And I thought Zach had a valid point to that. I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
I knew you were going to take that.
That's your and Zach's opinion, but I don't think that Dub and I agree.
All right. All right. So my first pick, I'm going to go ahead and get this one off the board. I'm going to pick Round Ball Rock from NBA on NBC.
Wow.
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah, that is outside the box.
Wow. What's your verdict on that pick?
That is.
Number one is a little insane because it's kind of like, I don't think either of me or
you weren't even alive, bro.
Dude,
Yeah,
I don't think does that even count?
Yeah.
NBA on NBC was a TV show. It was a TV show. Such a good pick. Oh my God.
Wow.
I cannot believe.
I don't even know what to.
Was that on your list or no?
No, fuck no. I don't think of a basketball game as a TV show.
It was programming on NBC. NBA on NBC. That was programming on NBC.
Does any intro for the Olympics, any sporting event at all count?
Yeah.
I mean, we're counting it.
It's a TV show.
I guess let the audience
decide. It's a show that's on TV.
Let the audience decide. It's a great song, though. There's no denying it. It's a great song.
All right. Man. There's so many iconic ones. You know what? I'm gonna draft today based on my own personal preference. And my number one pick was taken off the board. So I'm just gonna go with what I like. And I'm gonna go with the Friday Night Lights theme song.
Oh, good one.
Explosions in the Sky is the name of the band. Your Hand in Mine is the name of the song.
Elite pick.
Great song.
Elite pick. Or could have been a first round pick.
I thought that would like a first one. Yeah. Not
great. Great in this show, great in the movie. No questions there. All right. It's my second pick. I'm going the OC, Phantom Planet.
Great song. Great song. Great opening credit scene. I have no qualms with that.
Arguably makes the show, I would say. Show is very hit or miss. theme song, incredible.
The later the show went on, the worse it got.
First season, have you seen
Jalen,
it?
did you watch the OC?
No, that over my head.
What year were you born?
2001.
Okay, so this was like the height of the OC was probably 2004-ish. And that was before there was like DVRs in dorm rooms. And so we would have somebody with a VHS. If we couldn't watch it live, we would have somebody with a VHS record it. And like there would legitimately be like the OC watch parties, 8 to 10 people in a dorm room watching it.
You should watch the first episode.
You record the intro?
I mean, this is a very white thing also. I will admit that. It was a very white show. It's about high school kids in Orange County who are degenerates. Like it's
white, rich high school kids in Orange. I think you would like the show, honestly. You should watch one episode of it.
My pick is going to be like, I feel like it's a white show.
Okay.
Too, so.
Say it.
Oh, it's Full House.
Oh, damn it.
Good one.
You're off to a great start. Fuck.
Yeah.
He's a good
I feel like that's an iconic one. Yeah.
Okay. 2 solid ones. You got another one?
Ooh. It's up in the air, but I used to watch this with my mom. I'm going to say Golden Girls.
Interesting.
Another good theme song.
That was not on my board.
That was not on my board.
I'm not
either.
sure I even know it. Golden Girls is a massive fan base too, so people are probably going to like that pick.
Yeah.
All right. Third, I'm going, I'm taking this because I'm worried someone else is going to take it. I'm going the Jeffersons. Moving on up.
Okay.
Oh, good one.
That's a very good one. You know that when I was at Duke, they chanted JJ Redick Dynamite. And it was from JJ Walker from Good Times. Because that was his like catchphrase was dynamite, you know? And my therapist actually got me all the seasons of Good Times on DVD.
That's amazing.
And I was
nuts.
debating between the Good Times theme and the Jeffersons theme. Took my Jefferson theme. I'm not going there yet.
All right.
I'm not going there yet because I really want these next two. I'm going to pick the Walking Dead theme, and I'm going to take Game of Thrones off the board in the 4th round.
Game of Thrones had to be picked.
I don't know either of those, but yeah.
Walking Dead feels like a little bit of a.
I think Walking Dead is better.
Dub, what's your feeling?
I don't know. JJ's picks always like kind of confuse me a little. So, I don't know. I feel like if he was gonna do, you did the Game of Thrones one, right?
Yeah, I did Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that would have been your one. I think your one is honestly thrown me off a little.
It's still shook.
Yeah. The one.
You never watched Game of Thrones?
No. I think when I wanted to like get into it, it was just so many seasons, and then I started watching Snowfall, and it was kind of over from there.
That's a hilarious reason to not watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it was over.
All right, I have my 4th one. I'm taking Sopranos.
Okay.
Good one. I thought that would be higher.
Yeah, that could have. To me, I could have taken that in the 1st round.
What is the Sopranos theme song?
Play it. You'll recognize it.
Will I?
Yeah.
I never watched
So,
the show.
did you ever hear the Nas remix of it?
Mm-mm.
Nas covered it on one of his albums. I forget which one.
Is it Woke Up This Morning?
Yeah.
I mean, it's objectively not a good song. It's
You've
not a
listened
good
to
song. It's a great TV show.
You listened
I
to
heard.
4 seconds of it. It's arguably the greatest intro in television history.
All right. Well, I disagree with that.
So that
We're not debating the show. We're debating the song.
I don't even know what to say. Just
All right.
you're up.
Oh, do I have? Who
You
is
have
it?
two.
Me?
You have two
got
now.
2,
Yeah.
Dub.
Oh,
Close it.
this is 4 and 5, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the Law and Order, the Special Victims Unit. I think it's like bum 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 bum.
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
Fuck, I
That's a
had
good
that on mine. That's a great one.
That's a really good one. I'm gonna do a cartoon. I don't want to, but I'm gonna do the Scooby-Doo theme. The Scooby-Doo, where are you? That one, the old one. Like I think it's like from like the 70s. I think it's a good one.
That would not be in my top 5. That might
really?
lose you this draft.
I mean, a strong draft. For sport.
It's not the greatest.
It's all right.
It was a debate. I wanted to it's
another very popular. You picked 5 extremely popular shows, so I think you might still win because of it. All right, I'm closing it out. I got a bunch of alts, but I'm taking for my 5th one, not to stay on the HBO theme, but I'm taking White Lotus.
Ooh.
White Lotus theme is hard as fuck.
White Lotus theme. Dude, I didn't watch season 2. I will say that. I loved season 1. I want to mention here a few that I had written down. Obviously, Cheers is still on the board for anybody who watched that. The Curb theme song, iconic. Mad Men is my favorite show ever. It's an okay theme song, but solid. I mentioned Good Times. The X-Files, iconic theme song. But because you picked the OC, I'm going to pick the Dawson's Creek theme song.
God.
I don't want to wait for our lives to be over.
Talk about a fucking bad song.
Yes, or will it?
I think this lost.
Yeah.
No way.
Dude, when that show was on and they would play the opening credits with that and just the North Carolina, just scenery and topography.
I think this is a North Carolina bias.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is.
Have you ever seen a single moment of this show, Dawson's Creek? Don't. The only thing we could do a screening of some of these with you and just get your 10-minute reaction. But I think
we should do a pilot episode series with Jalen Williams.
Watch all these.
Just watch one pilot episode.
This is a strong.
I'm mad at my Scooby-Doo pick. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to pick Seinfeld or the Andy Griffin show, but I am a little disappointed. I wanted to have a wild card in there.
What do you think about Simpsons? I was thinking about Simpsons.
I thought you guys were gonna take Simpsons, so I kind of I didn't really put it in my I didn't even put it in my.
I feel
list.
like the intro of The Simpsons is more iconic than the song.
Yeah,
what happens on the board is more iconic than the actual
that's
song.
valid.
Yeah, like Phineas and Ferb could have been in there. I feel like everybody knows that one.
I'm surprised no one picked Friends. Friends is Friends. People say Friends.
Yeah,
is
that
the
was
most
on the
famous.
list.
I'm not a Friends.
Oh, you know what? The other one that I maybe should have picked with the 5th, Stranger Things, the theme song for Stranger Things.
Good one.
That goes hard.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That goes hard.
Yeah.
That 1980s synth rock.
Yeah.
Jalen, always appreciate it. This has been The Draft, presented by New Era, and always good to catch up with you, Jalen.